Hi photo students, this video is to show you how to edit your photos that you shot for composition. We shot these a while back and we turned in the folder that had 20 to 30 unedited shots, and now we're going to spend the next couple of days editing these and getting these turned in. So to begin, we started editing, or sorry, we shot for composition a while back. I'm going to look at the list that we were shooting on. So this is my daily update that you guys have access to. And let's look way back to when we were before spring break. Okay, so you turned in 20 to 30 of your best compositional elements photos. We were looking for rule of thirds, bird's eye, repetition, leading lines, natural framing, oblique points of view, symmetrical balance, eye level points of view, and low angle points of view, as just a reminder. So first, let's go from the very beginning. If you have not turned in your photos yet, or even looked through your photos, make sure you're opening your Photos app, which is in your dock, that little color wheel down here. Your photos should be sitting inside of this app, and what you can do is make sure you are selecting your compositional elements photos. So I'm going to press Shift, hold on the first one, click on the last one, select all of the ones in between. I'm going to right click, say Get Info. I'm going to make sure my last name and the name of the project are on here. We can just put comp or composition if you'd like. X out of that box, go up to File, go to Export, export 28 photos. Make sure Use Title is selected, hit Export again. And if you don't have a folder already created with your last name and comp on your desktop, make sure you're making a new folder, calling it your last name, composition, da 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 da, and then hit export to end up in that folder. All right. Once you see this little timer up here expire, you guys can X out of the Photos app and then open your photos from your desktop folder. All right, so I'm going to start opening my photos from my desktop folder, and here is my list of photos that I took in the metal sculpture room. I took more outside, I just am not on the same computer right now. So I'm going to find my best compositional ones. So I'm just looking through the 28 that I have here, and some of them are kind of boring and some of them are more interesting. So I really like the composition of this one. I like how this is just in focus and everything down here is not in focus. So I'm going to pull that one into Photoshop. And I'm going to go back, and again, you're editing for 5. So I'm going to find my best 5 here out of the 20 to 30 that you guys shot. I like this one too. It's a nice eye level shot. That was a bird's eye shot. This is kind of like a high angle shot, kind of like that one. And let's see. This is a nice oblique shot. So I've got 4. This is a good worm's eye shot of the ceiling, and this is a good bird's eye shot. So I'm going to go with the bird's eye shot here because I like that one. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 photos open, so I can actually close out my folder there and open up Photoshop. I'm going to open up my workspace a little bit wider. Remember, the things that you need are your toolbar. If you don't have your toolbar there, go up to Window, go down to Tools, and make sure that Tools is selected, and Tools will pop up here. You should have your Layers palette open, and you should have a Properties and Adjustments palette open. You should also always just open History in case you need to go back in time if you make a mistake. Okay, so for these photos, you guys can edit in color or black and white if you'd like to, but I'm going to show you how to do a selective adjustment, and that's the new thing that we're going to be learning for this project. So I'm first of all just going to edit this properly. So I feel like it's a little blown out kind of in the edges right here. I also feel like it's a little dull. I want to see what it's going to look like in black and white, so I'm actually going to make a background copy first. I'm going to duplicate that layer so that I'm only adjusting the copy and not the original. And I'm going to go down to my adjustment layers, and I'm going to make this in black and white and just see if I like it that way. You can always turn it off. I think I'm going to keep color for a moment and see what that does. So to edit for color, don't forget you guys should be creating a brightness contrast layer, and you should be working with color balance and or hue and saturation. So there's several different things you guys can do to edit for color, and the only things we've really talked about so far are color balance and hue and saturation. So I'm making all of these layers just to begin. So my brightness and contrast, it looks a little bright to me, so I'm actually going to darken it up just a little bit, and I'm going to increase the contrast just a little bit. So here's the difference. Those little letters look a little darker, and then the background looks a little bit darker, which I think is good. I'm also going to go to color balance, and here I can adjust the different colored channels of the photo. So, you know, the background, there's not a lot of color in here, but the background has some like yellows and oranges and whatnot. So I could either increase the saturation of those if I wanted to, or decrease and make it look a little bit more blue. I'm going to increase the saturation of those just a little bit. So I'm going to make it a little bit more red, maybe pull a little tiny bit of magenta in there, and then a little bit of yellow in there. So here's the difference. It's very subtle, but now this is the original photo, and this is with a little bit warmer of tones. I've pulled in, those mid-tones are going more into the red zones. I could also go to the shadows, which are going to be these darker areas in here, and I can increase the warmness of those too, or I can make those look a little bit more cool if I wanted to. And really I'm just going for like my own personal taste here. I want it to look warmer, but I don't want it to look like weird in color. So I'm going to go to my highlights now, which are going to be my brighter areas, and I'm going to strictly focus on those areas too. Pull those into a little bit warmer tones. All right, so here's my original photo, and here's my color balanced photo, right? Original photo looks kind of green now, color balanced photo, right? So I'm going to turn that off for a moment and go to hue and saturation. This is an area where you guys can get a little too crazy, so I'm gonna make sure, I want you to make sure that you're not oversaturating or changing the hue of the photo. So yes, it's fun to change the hue of the photo, but it's completely unrealistic, and there's a time and a place to actually use hue, and we're just not gonna use hue right now. But saturation, you can either desaturate your photo and basically turn it black and white. You can also really overly saturate your photo, which we're not going for either. So saturation is just going to increase all the color all around. So I'm going to increase it to maybe around 20 or so and see what that looks like. All right, very, very subtle, but it did the overall photo. So I'm going to keep my color balance there. Now my color balance looks a little too red, so I'm going to actually decrease the saturation just a little bit. Okay, so here's my adjusted photo for color. Here again was the original photo. I upped the brightness and contrast a little bit there. I adjusted the color balance, and I adjusted the hue and saturation of the photo as well. So if I wanted to just simply adjust the background and not adjust the heads of these letters here, I could do what's called a selective adjustment by selecting the paintbrush in my tool bar right here. So it's the brush tool. And I can basically mask over some of these areas to take away the adjustment. So let's say I am in my color balance layer right here, and only my color balance layer is selected, so I can only see color balance. If I increase this, let's say, really, really red, and I like the way it looks on these letters, I can take it away from the entire background by selecting my paintbrush. I can use the brackets next to the backslash key on my keyboard to make my paintbrush a little bit larger. And I can start painting over the background with black being on top in my color picker. So if you click this arrow, it'll toggle between black and white. When black is on top, it allows you to brush over areas of your photo that you do not want to adjust. So you're basically subtracting that adjustment. All right, so you can see it's like turning blue. It's going back to its original color. My brush is really, really harsh right now, so I'm actually going to go up to my opacity and decrease the opacity just a little bit, but also go up to my brush settings and decrease the hardness a bunch on the brush too, because the edges you can see are like super duper harsh right there. So in order to go back to what I did, I can go back to white in my color picker, and I can go back in and bring all those adjustments back if I wanted to. So white adds the adjustment if you mess up. Black takes away the adjustment. Notice also in my layers palette here, that little white square that's next to color balance is showing us a little like preview of what I'm doing. So you can see since I changed the opacity, it's a little bit gray in the edge of that box, and that's where I've taken that adjustment and brought it back in. If I put my opacity all the way back at 100% again up here, and I brush over with a really large brush this time, you'll see that that box will turn completely white again, all right? So I missed a spot right there. My box right here is completely white, right? So again, let's do this again. I'm going to make sure my brush is soft. So my hardness is around 12 or so up here. It's not 100%, but it's not 0%. I'm going to make sure that black is on top in my color picker, and I'm going to subtract that adjustment from just the background. And this particular photo, I mean, I can see, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. Remember, you can press the space bar to move your photos around like this. I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller. I can go in and I can bring that adjustment back to like the tips of these letters right here. And I want to do a nice job of it. And sometimes you don't really need to selectively adjust. It just depends on what you're going for in your photo. It's very, very helpful when you have photos that have like really dark areas like shadows, or you have like a photo of someone that's backlit on accident or something like that. These composition photos, it may not be completely necessary, but I'd like you to try it on at least 1 or 2 of your 5 edited photos. All right. So ultimately you guys are shooting, or you're editing 5 of the shot photos for black and white or for color, and you're doing a selective adjustment. Let me reduce the size of this a little bit. So here's my original photo, and I just warmed up those pins a little bit. So it looks a little funky, but let's go back in and clean up the edge of this a little bit. All right, so there is my quick finished photo. I'm not sure if I'm in love with it or not. I might want to change the color balance a little bit again. I might go to something like that. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Okay, so if I'm finished with this photo, I'm going to go up to File, Save As. I'm going to call this Edit, so change the name to Edit. I'm going to make sure the format is being saved to Photoshop and it's being saved to my Coleman Comp folder or on your desktop. I'm going to hit Save and hit OK. I'm going to go up to File, go to Save As, and I'm also going to save this as a JPEG. Okay. All right, so the other thing we can work on, and I'm going to get rid of these layers now, is turning this to black and white. So in black and white, remember, you should always be using the curves adjustment to adjust the contrast. So I'm going to go up to Curves, create a curves layer. I'm going to increase the brightness just a little bit, maybe darken up the gray tones, and increase the contrast in the black pins down there a little bit. So you guys can play around with curves in order to create a lot of contrast. I really like that. I like the contrast in that. What you can do with this too, and on your black and white layer, if you'd like to, but use it sparingly, you could bring the color into just the pins and leave the background black and white. So you can do selective adjustments with black and white as well. So I could go into the background and erase all the black and white from the background if I wanted to and bring the yellow back in, but leave those little those little letters, I could leave those black and white if I wanted to. So this might work better for a different kind of photo, but we'll see how it goes. So regardless, that's my kind of quick demo introducing selective adjustments. You guys can edit for black and white or for color. Just remember to save as a PSD and then save as a JPEG, and you guys are doing 5 edited photos for color or black and white, your choice, with at least 1 or 2 of your photos edited for selective adjustments. All right, let me know if you have any questions. Good luck. Thank you.